Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Wednesday, the 3rd of June, 2020. My name is Carey Holzman, and getting started on time for once, which is a nice change. Thank you to those of you in the chat who have contributed. Andrew Dorset with five New Zealand dollars, who's saying hello. Sharon Idle with a £2 contribution and said Amazon gift card, Dosh, now awaiting your redemption. Very nice, Sharon. Thank you. Tony Wallow with $4.99 and a little birthday present for me a little early. Thank you, Tony, as always. And Hugh Wong with a $2 Canadian contribution. Said, hey, Carey. Actually, it just says $2. It doesn't say Canadian anymore. So welcome back, Carey. We missed you. Glad you're well. Okay, so last few days I have not been here. I had to go out to California to visit with my father. He's having some very dire health concerns, and I wanted to go see him. I did not know when I left that protests and riots would be all around me. I had to be in the Los Angeles area, actually between the coast and LA during my visit, which puts me on the western side of LA, meaning I have to cross through Los Angeles. And those of you, I'm sure, are well aware of the protests and the rioting that are happening in some of the bigger cities. They're happening in Phoenix while I was gone, in Scottsdale. Not to the extent of what we saw in Los Angeles. There is a curfew in place here in Phoenix. It starts at 8 o'clock. This is, I'm going to mention this just to get it out of the way. I don't think it's anything shocking to anybody that I believe in equality. For all people at all times. I'm against police brutality against anybody at any time, and the constant abuse that is often shown on social media with the police always saying, well, we didn't see the whole video, which is just ridiculous. We saw enough, and nothing we saw in the videos, most of these videos, is ever justifiable. The essential public execution from an officer or 4 officers is, I'm speechless. And I don't want to make this a political channel, and I don't want to engage in political discussion. I do want to see change. I hope to be a part of that change in any way, shape, or form. And the damage and the rioting and the storefronts and the businesses that are located just in the wrong part of town are unfortunate, innocent victims of this as well. So hopefully, the federal government of the United States will issue an olive branch to change the parameters of allowing officers to be held personally accountable for when they overreach, so that it's not just the city and the taxpayers paying for the mistake of an officer. And further, that officer should be prevented from moving to another city and getting hired again by another police department, which is often the routine. And when an officer is not personally held accountable, they often, in my experience, my personal experience, we've seen it here during the swatting event here on the YouTube video that I had, but was live when I was swatted. They often allow the power to go to their heads. I'm not aware of any police officers that have been fired for being too friendly. Maybe that's happened before, but certainly no protesters and riots have occurred because an officer was too friendly. Not aware of an officer getting in trouble for who they didn't arrest. So I think officers of the law need to be reasonable, regardless if they feel the person they're arresting deserves it, which I think is often what's going through the mind of these officers. Not that I can speak for them, but that's for the judge to do. Your job is to apprehend them and to do whatever is minimum required to do that. And so change has to happen. And if this is what it's going to take to erode away that systemic failure that's been going on far too long, I just can't tell you how sad it makes me. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and move on to what we do here, because look, if I could solve the problem, I would. But talking about it is a good first step, and hopefully people that are better able to make that change will do so with all of my support, and I hope they have your support as well. I just can't believe it's 2020 and this is still going on. In the meantime, let me tell you about some of what's going on. I have a lot of work to get done, and behind me is a computer that was sent in from a viewer in Ohio, and you'll see there's no cooler on the processor if you look closely. It's a Ryzen processor. And in the video notes below the video, the viewer wrote in, and I'm going to read that aloud so you can all be on the same page. I have to pull the notes up. I have not memorized them. So where are my notes? Give me just a minute here. Okay. This comes from Douglas in Ohio. He says, Carey, I've been a big fan for a few years now, and I'm watching your video. Oh, and from watching your videos, they inspired me to build my own PC. But a few months ago, my computer stopped showing anything on my screen. I think it's the motherboard. And I tried a new CPU in it, and still nothing shows up on the screen. I took the CPU cooler off to try a Ryzen 3 CPU, just to see if the CPU might have been broken. But nothing changed. And I accidentally took the AMD processor mounting brackets, removed the screws that held those in place, and the screws fell behind the motherboard. And I haven't touched it since then. The computer is only about a year and a half old, so just enough time for the warranty to be up. I don't really want to keep working on it myself, just in case I make it worse. I know you're a busy guy these days, but if you would be interested in fixing it, I would be grateful. If you want to fix it on your channel, I have no problem with that. And if you do accept to look at it, I would be honored if you would sign the case. I would have never built my own computer if it was not for yourself inspiring me, and keep inspiring others. This is from, again, Douglas in Ohio. Now, when Douglas sent this, I told him it should, take it to FedEx, have them pack it for you, and expect to spend about $125. Douglas sent me a copy of the receipt, which has the tracking info, so I know when to expect it. And it was $156. And I said, I think that's what it was. And I said to Douglas, why did this cost you so much money? I don't know. But I noticed the weight was like 56 pounds. I didn't stop to ask Douglas what computer case he used. This is a Be Quiet PureBase 600, I think. This is a large case. Very large case, and it's the same case, maybe even bigger than what I built the 3950X in, which I'm not a fan of. I guess this one must be a bigger one than the 700. Maybe it's a 900. I'm sure that folks in the chat room can tell me what it is. And he's got a Ryzen 7 in there, according to the sticker on the glass panel. And so we're going to verify the customer's complaint, and we'll go through the diagnostic process live here, and trying to do what the big tech channels here on YouTube don't do, which is real work from actual customers, and show you what it's really like to be a computer technician. Nothing is scripted or rehearsed. Everything is real, as it would be as if you were a real computer technician. You don't get a heads up from the customers. You often deal with different computers multiple times a day. So it's not as though you're just working on Dells or HPs and you learn one thing and that applies to all things. In this line of work, you're going to deal with all different makes and models of computers, things that people have built themselves, pre-built, and variations all-in-ones, et cetera, liquid coolers. It runs the gamut, and so you have to have a pretty wide range or open-mindedness to a basic understanding of what to expect and how things work, which often, for guys like me, makes the manual unnecessary. Some people have criticized me for not referring to motherboard manuals or other manuals, that I prefer to figure it out myself. And I do try to explain to those viewers that I'm not here to impress you. I am not here to show how smart I am. I am simply here to share with you how I do my job that I've been doing for 29 years professionally, more than 29 years. And for those of you who appreciate that, well, I appreciate you too. And for those of you who don't, I don't know you, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change my process. And for me, figuring things out is like a video game. You can certainly read a cheat or a walkthrough on a video game to get you through the game faster, but that doesn't make you smarter. And I kind of feel like it takes the fun out of the game. For me, figuring things out where a manual may explain it is a little like a game walkthrough where they tell you how to get through the game without you having to figure it out. What's the point of playing the game? There are times, however, when I do read the manual or I usually reference the manual. If I'm going to pull a manual up, it's usually just I need a certain little bit of information that I can't seem to figure out and I'm in a hurry, or I can't think of any other quicker way to get to that information, and I just want to jump to the page of the manual that covers that little missing piece and then get back to what I was doing. That's my style. So one of the things I really enjoy about computer repair is there's a lot of different ways that can be done. As long as you achieve having a happy customer with a repaired computer when it's all said and done, what road you take to get you there is one of the beauties of being a computer repair tech, is that it's not just one size fits all, one set of diagnostics, or one piece of software you can install that does it all for you, in which case, why would we even have a job, right? You could easily automate that, or perhaps write a book to just train people to all behave and act the same, which to me would not make this an interesting career whatsoever. So that's my philosophy behind it. A couple other contributions came in. Let me give a couple shots out here to these generous folks. A thank you to South Bay Technology Gurus for their $2 contribution. They say, fun stuff. Niles Vandesan contributes €2. He says, how is the situation in Phoenix? It is not as bad as Los Angeles. However, as I mentioned, there's an 8 o'clock curfew. I was still coming in from California last night, and I wasn't home till 9:30 at night. And I didn't see a single police officer anywhere. I was told, however, they were stopping cars before 8 p.m. and interrogating innocent civilians, asking what they were doing here, why, what are they here to do, where are you going, why are you going there? It's very offensive and oppressive, and I don't believe that the police should be harassing and stopping random vehicles at a checkpoint. I live very close to the Westgate shopping district where there was a shooting about 2 weeks ago, and they are concerned about rioters and looters gathering there. So the freeway exit ramps are closed at night to keep people from gathering there. And I believe it's because I live so close that the police are ensuring that we have no intent to drive to Westgate. However, I think the police could very easily ask for your driver's license, see what your address is, and use their heads to determine where you're going. If the address is in the neighborhood, those people are probably going home. So leave them alone, and beyond that, tell them to have a nice day and apologize for disrupting their travel. I have a very serious concern regarding being stopped and being interrogated by a fellow member of my community who is supposed to be protecting me. You're going to stop 300 cars to potentially find one bad person, or one person set out with it. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be another way. You cannot do this in the United States of America. I think they're poking an angry bear with a stick. But again, I want to get off the subject of it because it's just going to look. I can't imagine why anybody would think everything's okay. It's clearly not okay. So if I suppose anybody takes issue with my stand on this, they're welcome to go away, because I don't need those people in my life. But it is not my intent to be divisive or to alienate folks. But there's a real serious problem happening, and the way the government is going about this is wrong. The government needs to extend an olive branch, not by, in my opinion, not by saying, well, here's what we're doing with the offending officers, but rather, here's something we're going to do to prevent this or discourage this from ever happening again. That's what needs to happen. And when the government does that, I believe these protests will stop. And the rioting and the looting, again, it was very much affecting travel and my stay in Los Angeles. It all happened. If this was going on prior to my leaving, I would not have left. It was not a good place to be. It was not a good place, not a good time to be there. Anyway, thank you, Niles. Stephen Wales contributes £10. He says, I can't stay up for tonight's stream because he's in Scotland, but since Netflix helped me save some time again today, grab a Coke or two on me. Hey, thank you, Stephen. David Griswold's contributed $5. He says, Carey, good to see you safe and well. Kevin Arsenal with another $20 Canadian contribution. Thank you, Kevin. He says, keep doing what you do. Ed Schwarz has contributed $2. He says, I always learn something from your video. I hope so, Ed. Thank you. John Craig with a £5 contribution. He says, cheat sheets? You can get cheat sheets? Is there one for Monopoly? Yeah, it looks just like the money, and if you have a whole bunch of those, you can easily win the game. Steve Warrington contributed $2. He says, glad to see you, Carey. Hey, thank you, Steve. Mike Jackson with a $10 contribution. He says, you always put on a good show and great technology, and I appreciate you. That's from Mike Jackson. Hey, Mike, thank you. That looks like a new name, but I guess you're a moderator here. Chris Kingan has contributed $10. Carey, I'm a computer tech and feel you regarding having to work on many different models and manufacturers. Bearpaw has contributed £2. He says, I always enjoy your content and I've been missing your live shows. Thank you, Bearpaw. Rick Lakes contributed $5 and he said, I'm sorry to hear about your dad's failing health. And Armando Garcias contributed $2 and said, I learned more from you than I did in school. Thank you. Guys, thank you again for all of your generosity, your kindness, and your support. Someone noticed these mouse pads behind me. I nearly forgot to mention my sister is addressing people. I've said time and time again, and I'm going to keep saying it. I really don't want to be selling. I don't want to be in the merch business. It's not what I set out to do. I set out to educate and to empower people. That being said, people are like, hey, can you make t-shirts? Can you make mugs? Can you make, stuff? We want to buy stuff. So I've given sort of the reins to my sister and asked her, can you deal with this? Can you come up with ideas? So she had these custom made. These are mouse pads, and they're made of a microfiber material that you can use to clean your screen safely. And it's just a logo, powers in your hands. You can get them at shopcareyholzman.com. You can go to careyholzman.com, but Google Chrome will say that the site's not safe or something because it's forwarding. I don't know, something stupid. Shopcareyholzman.com will get you there. And the case badges and all the other merch that people have asked for us there. This is a brand new product. We have a limited amount of these in stock. If they sell well, we'll get more, and if they don't sell well, I guess they'll still be available for purchase later on. So my thanks to my sister for staying on top of that. They are nice. She gave me a few samples, so it's pretty cool. John Dorrington has contributed £2. He says, hello, Carey from the UK. Hey, John, thank you so much. Now, Douglas sent me some photos. Hold on. Give me a second. I'm hitting wrong buttons over here. Here's a picture Douglas sent me of himself and his friend building their computer. There he is. And I think he sent me another picture of the parts before the build. Here it is. Picture sideways. I wonder if I can rotate that. Rotate, transform, rotate 90 degrees clockwise, and now it doesn't fit on the screen. So I got to go to transform again and fit to screen. And then it turns it sideways. Well, you can see these are the parts for his build. I can't seem to. Turning a picture 90 degrees clockwise is apparently beyond my technical ability. So there we have it. And the box. I want to show you the condition of the box. I was really shocked by how much Douglas had to pay to get this shipped. But it was, like I said, about 56 pounds, I want to say, which is about nearly 20 pounds more than most computers that I ship. And of course, the heavier the box, the more it's going to cost. But you can see from this picture, the way that the box arrived, it's got a significant dent in the top of it. Now, what FedEx is supposed to do, or at least what they do when I ship a computer, is they cut the box down. Once the computer's inside of it, they reduce the height of the box to what is the minimum required for what's inside of the box. It does not appear that they cut this box down, which is weird. And because they didn't cut the box down, there was a lot of space between the top of the computer, which is lying down in there with the glass facing up, and the bubble wrap and paper material they used to protect it. So as you can see, there's a great big old dent. Now, there was no damage to the inside, but that should have never happened. I think I have a few other angles of that damage. You can see it's pretty significantly indented, inside of the box is sort of bulging there. And that, of course, is a major concern. And if you are getting any packages arriving like this to your door, make sure that you photograph them before you open them, just in case the contents inside of the box is damaged. If so, you can file an insurance claim, and you can show that the first thing the shipping company wants to know is what was the condition of the box. Because if the box was in good shape, but the contents were broken, then you packed it wrong. But since FedEx packed this, they can't say that. In this case, showing the damage to the box, if the case were to be dented or this glass were to be broken or cracked, then there would be less obstruction to getting insurance compensated from the shipper. Because, you know, insurance companies are looking for every reason to not pay you. That's just a general insurance rule of thumb. Car insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance, shipping insurance. They don't want to pay you. They're looking for an excuse to not pay you. So you want to cover all your bases if you're going to file a shipping claim. It's a pretty expensive machine, costs a lot of money to ship. And my advice is pay for the insurance. So usually the boxes from FedEx arrive perfectly. This box was supposed to arrive on Friday, and it did not. And then it said it would arrive on Saturday, and then there was no tracking update on Monday until later in the evening, and then it said it would arrive on Tuesday. So this literally arrived yesterday, even though it was scheduled to arrive on Friday. I don't know why. Could have been due to the protest. I really don't know. Robert says he lost an eBay sale to a customer because FedEx never made it, never got the box to the customer. I've had no lost packages with FedEx, and I've never had any lost packages with UPS until this month or last month. I've had 3 packages disappear, all from UPS, singly from UPS. I've had an Amazon, they're all from Amazon, but from individual sellers on Amazon, not from Amazon corporate. One was Amazon Prime. One was a computer case that was ordered in April, and the tracking info just stopped being updated. That's all UPS. I don't know what's going on at UPS, but I would strongly advise, if you want to ship something and get it to where it's going, my experience has been FedEx is the single most reliable shipper, and UPS is the single most unreliable shipper. I don't understand the point of a tracking number if you can't track the package and tell me where it is. So those sellers have all refunded my money and have filed claims with UPS. That package has to be somewhere. Unfortunately, I needed that case for a build and I can't find another one. So I'm going to have to determine what other case I want to use. I ordered an N-Case M1. I guess it's on version 6. I told you there was a waiting list. I put myself on the waiting list, and within 3 days they said, okay, we're ready to take your order. That arrived today. So that'll be used in a future build, and we can compare the current version of the N-Case M1 with the original version that I have and already have a video on. That is the other streaming computer that I use at the other location, in case you guys were curious whatever happened to that. So that's all future content coming up. Also, Steve Bass will be joining me this Friday as we do a remote computer build. And a few other contributions have come in. Let me say thank you to Scott Hallinan with a $5 New Zealand contribution. He says, here's some money for some Coke and that yacht. Saw some yachts in California. says, I enjoy your streams. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Scott. Wonder Woman with a $20 contribution said, I'm sorry about your father. I feel your pain. My mom passed away yesterday morning in her sleep. I cry with you. Wow. Wow. Well, that's recent. I'm sorry to hear about that. You know, I suppose if you take anything silver lining, it's that I think we all can hope that we go in our sleep, right? So I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for your kindness. Jose and Veronica Lopez with a $2 contribution says, great to see you back, Carey. Sharon Idle with a £2 contribution said, I just ordered a mouse mat. Hurry and get yours. Sharon, thank you so much for your continued support. The Drunk Control with a $10 contribution said, not a cheat sheet per se, but your OCD is infectious. Somebody had sent me a meme that said, it's not OCD, it's just putting stuff back where it belongs. They didn't use the word stuff, but I think you know where I'm going with that. Thanks, guys. Thanks for, again, supporting the channel. It helps keep me sponsor-free, but not entirely sponsor-free. I'm happy to be affiliated with the folks over at Cyber Systems. They make a program called RoboForm. It's a password management program. I'm not going to sit here and sell this to you. If you're still writing down your passwords and stuff like that, you really need to just download the free version of RoboForm, and you'll understand why I'm so proud to be affiliated with them. I've been using their product for over 15 years. I'm very happy that they're sponsoring the channel right now. You know, they're not a big anchor sponsor, but they do help. And I'm going to be using their product whether they sponsor me or not, right? So, and you know that because you've seen the history. They've been on this channel since, what, 2008, I think is when I first created the channel. So 12 years I've been doing this, and I think you'll find I'm pretty consistent with what I say and what I do. And I want to be very careful that I'm not becoming a used car salesman sort of stereotype in pushing products at you. This is something I advise for my clients. Password management is important. If you're not using a password management program, please use something, because if you're writing your passwords down on a piece of paper or something, you're doing it the hard way. And a password manager can make your life easy. There's a lot of different password manager programs to choose from, and it may be a difficult decision to make. Just know that Cyber Systems and the folks at RoboForm, they support this channel, and that may be what pushes you over the fence to support them back. So again, my thanks to those folks over at Cyber Systems. I'm going to bring them back on, and we're going to go through some tutorials and walkthroughs of the product. Some people are still a little uncertain on how a password management program works. It's really super easy. Once you see the concept on it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Now, getting on to, oh, my viewers numbers can't be right. Hold on, I got to refresh my screen. How many viewers do we have right now? 823 viewers. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining me today. And hello to all my friends in blue in the chat room. I'm sorry I haven't been paying much attention to the chat today. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there. And those of you who are not yet blue, I'm just looking for people who are regulars, who come to participate in the chats and that are kind. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care about your race, your gender, your religion, what school you went to. I don't care how much money you got. None of that matters to me. I just care whether or not you're a jerk. If you're a jerk, you can get lost. But if you're a kind person, if somebody comes in here, and I'm just going to give you an example. Somebody says, hey, I just built my own system, and they're so happy, right? And they, oh, what did you build? Well, I built this with this CPU and this motherboard and this video card. Please don't say to them, oh, why did you use that instead of this, as implying they did something wrong. Okay, that's not cool. They're excited and they want to share it with somebody. And all you need to say, if you feel you need to say something, is, do you like it? And next thing you know, you'll have a friend. But if you start criticizing their decision making, You don't know them. You know what I mean? Like, they could have a very good reason why they did that, and you should assume that they did. Don't be critical of other people. Support and be kind. And if you have nothing nice to say, keep it to yourself. And, just a little kindness can go a long way. I see people here in the chat, and I'll watch it, and I'm just in admiration of how the only thing you guys have in common is my channel, right? And the content here. And you're from all over the world, and many of you talk to each other as if you've known each other for years. And I can't tell you what that means to me. Many of you are engaging in discussion in the chat room just between each other as friends, even though you've never met and would never have met if not for this community that we're building. And when I see that kindness and that warmth, those are people that are quick to be turned blue. So that's why you see so many blue folks here. It's an indication to me. Sometimes I don't remember people's names, and that's a way for me to, to know who's regular and supportive and kind versus those I don't know yet. And they're also there to help me when somebody comes in and tries to use the popularity of my platform to promote a product or an agenda or to disrupt. They shut them down pretty quickly so that it doesn't interfere with my broadcast the way it used to. So my thanks to the folks in blue for looking out for me, and again, for being kind. Holy smokes, I see a giant contribution just came in. Not sure why I deserve that. Ryan Farmer has contributed 300 pounds. So a pound is worth, what, $1.50 US? That's a significant, very significant contribution. So today's show is being not only brought to you by Cyber Systems, but clearly Ryan Farmer, thank you so much. Mark Stevens with a $10 contribution says, hey, Carey, and Hot Dog Thompson, Hot Dog Thompson has contributed 10 bucks. Thank you, Hot Dog Thompson, and of course Mark Stevens. Also, looks like I missed a couple here. Jeremy Kramer with a $20 contribution says, Carey, glad to see you back. Keep up the great work. Buy a couple of cases of cloak. Says Harry Potter. Good friend of the channel. We've done repairs for him and builds for him. John Yasuda, always happy to see John. He's contributed 20 bucks. He says, Carey, have some chicken wings and a Coke on me. After the repair. John, you are too kind, far too kind. And finally, Daniel Paxson with a $2 contribution. He says, you inspired me also. Right on. Love it. Love it. Thanks, you guys. That kindness is, just being kind to each other is more important given, here in the U.S., given what's going on. It's really important right now that we're not critical of each other. We're all human beings. We all breathe the same air. We still all bleed. We still all hurt. And compassion and empathy are in short supply. So thank you for being who you are. All right. Maybe I can start the actual repair 30 minutes into my video. Yeah, if you're regular here, you know that's to be expected. It's like going to see a concert. You're like, well, don't show up for the first 45 minutes because the opening band's going to be out. Another generous contribution just came in. Eduardo Turan has contributed 100 Mexican pesos. Carey, he says, I finally acquired the Corsair 200R case with an EVGA power supply to reassemble an i5 6500 and match with my i5 9600K in its 100R case. Just need to put your signature or logo with a glass of Coke for you. Well, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you very much. The case badges are available at shopcareyholzman.com. Now, all the money is going to support the channel. It also goes to the charities, right? So part of what I do here, the Kids at Hope computers, I still have 3 more of those to build, as well as the computers that we give away to people in need. Primarily, it's been disabled American veterans, but I'm going to expand that a bit to people in our community that we're going to help others in our community. When the community says, hey, we're good, we don't need anything, then we'll extend out to beyond the community. But for now, we still have about 20 computers to give away once time permits. Right now is not a good time to ship again. With the protests and the riots, it's really interfering with shipping when they have to go through those cities. So I'm just going to hold off shipping anything. And again, I hope that this will find some, what's the word? I don't know that it'll be resolved, but we need to start moving in that direction. Can't think of the word I'm looking for. It's a give and a take, right? We each need to give and take. So the federal government needs to offer a change. It may not be the single solution, but we need to move in that direction. And I think once they do that, I think I'm hoping the protesting will stop. And hopefully it won't come back again anytime soon for any good, not that it's not justified. It's very justified and long overdue. Kevin Arsenault with another $20 Canadian contribution, and Rain One Full with a $2 Canadian contribution. Rochester NY87's contributed $50. He says, hope all has been well and safe. I haven't been here much lately, but I always enjoy watching and listening at work. Your kindness and support is not the first contribution from Rochester NY87. I hope not the last, and I really want you to know how much it means to me. Thank you. Sean Baxter with a £2 contribution. Paul 1961 with a $20 Canadian contribution. He says, hey, Carey, I hope all is well. Great video as always. Well, I hope so if I actually get to it. Thanks you guys. Please hold your contributions for right now. I like to stop what I'm doing and acknowledge them so I don't forget. But I want to focus on the repair now. So, again, I really do appreciate your support. And I'm going to ask you to just hold off on those. Save them till the end if you still feel like they're deserved. And let's start working. So this is the Be Quiet, what did I say was Pure Base. I guess it's in the photo, isn't it? I could probably just look at the photo again to see what the model of this case was. Somebody might have mentioned it in the chat room, but I didn't see it. So I need to go back to where the photos are and pull that picture of the parts. It is a, all right, you know what? I'm going to transform, rotate it. Let me close my camera out because it's really confusing. There we go. It's a Pure Base 900. Okay, so it's a 900. I can see the 900. So I guess it's a little larger than the 700. Now the 700 I used on the build I did for Madi a couple of builds ago. I did ship off the computer for Madi that I asked or commissioned Anthony Remus to do. Madi received that yesterday, by coincidence the same day I received this. And Madi said it arrived perfectly. I wasn't sure if I was going to rebox Anthony's computer or just put it back in the box with the way that Anthony had shipped it. And I talked to Anthony about it, and this is how Anthony ships computers across the country, and he hasn't really had any problems. So I thought, let's do it Anthony's way. So I put it all back the way it was. I put the little foam back inside of the case that Anthony had in there, packed it exactly like it was back in the original shipping box, taped it back up, took it over to FedEx. The guy at FedEx was all smiles because he didn't have any work to do. He's like, wait a minute, this is already boxed. I don't have to box it. He says, I love you. And Madi's got it, and it arrived perfectly. It's working, and I'll follow up with Madi to see how he likes it. So my thanks and appreciation to Madi for following up with me. I always love to hear back from people just to know how things are going. And geez, Ryan Farmer just contributed another 200 pounds, so he said, hell, let's take it to 500. 500 pounds, just so you guys know. I mean, that's a significant contribution. is about $628. Let's round it, $630 US dollars. So that's incredibly generous. I don't expect contributions of that size, and they make me speechless. I don't know what to say. But clearly, when somebody is that generous, it's always really important for them to know that I'm here for, if you want some advice or you want to talk to me on Skype, I will make the time, because if I don't, then I feel like our relationship is lopsided. I don't want to be somebody who takes more than I give. And so for the people who are more generous to me, I want to make sure that I can return that generosity in the best way that I can. So Ryan, if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Don't be shy. Even if you just want to say hello or talk sometime, well, we'll schedule a time. And for all the generous contributors and all my customers, obviously, anybody who I've ever worked for, they have my contact information, and they're always welcome to reach out to me at any time. I get a lot of requests from people who don't give anything. They're like, hey, can you help me? And I want to, I just don't have time. I have people that are paying and waiting, and there's just the one of me. So please don't take it personally. Okay, so with that, and again, wow, Ryan, that's very, very generous. All of you are very generous. Nicholas Iglini just contributed $9.99. He says, you were missed. I had to find some work to replace you, so I worked on my 20-year-old Ford Focus. Hey, it's great. It's being productive. I like it. I did film a small video while I was in California, and I filmed it on my Galaxy S10. It's just vibrated. What's going on? And it was just kind of a spur of the moment thing. Family member has a Dell all-in-one computer with a mechanical drive, and it was just painfully slow whenever would work on it remotely. It was just taking forever to do anything. And the specs look pretty good. So the only reason it could be slowing down is that mechanical drive. So I brought a Samsung 500 gig solid state drive, and I thought, I'll just change it while I'm out there. It shouldn't take very long to clone the existing mechanical drive with a Cronus using USB. So I brought with me just 4 things to do this job. I brought the used SSD, the SSD to USB cable, the Cronus flash drive that I use, this flash drive right here. I just put it in my suitcase, and my JIS screwdriver. What I didn't bring, and I should have brought a little spudger, a little device that you use to separate plastic because they have little clips and things are snapped together, especially with all-in-ones. And looking at all the YouTube videos on Dell Inspiron 20, it's called a Dell Inspiron 24. And if you look up hard drive replacements on those models, the first one that comes up is a good friend of mine. He's a friend of mine. I like to think of him as a good friend, Tim's Computer Repair. And just by coincidence, Tim's video came up, and it looked like a nightmare to crack it open. However, despite sharing the name Inspiron 24, there's also a model number. And this particular model number was super easy. You did not need the spudger to separate the plastic. Spudger, a word I did not know until my good friend Mitch Morrison mentioned it. And I thought he was making the word up. Thought it was a word like doodad. Turns out that's an actual term. And I do have one. I've got the iFixit, and I could have brought it. It turns out I didn't need it. So you'll be seeing, that's a pretty short video. It was a pretty easy job, much easier than I expected it to be. And I will share that with you as soon as I have time to edit it. So I did get some content while I was out there, just couldn't go live. And thank you to Joseph Panariello for his $5 contribution. Once again, please hold your, you know what, if you contribute, I'm not going to be able to acknowledge it until a little later because I really want to get started on this. So of course, I have to take this panel off, and I'm a little concerned I didn't get the cooler. I guess going to want me to put a Mugen 5 in is the only reason I can think that he wants, that he didn't ship the cooler. He must not want me to use that cooler. Now, typically, when a computer powers up but no video happens, in many cases, it's the RAM or one of the RAM modules. Now, if Douglas has already checked the RAM and he's already replaced the CPU, and assuming he has unplugged everything from the motherboard that's not required, then it sounds like a bad motherboard. But that's pretty rare, especially if it's a newer board. And I want to thank Douglas for allowing me to film this on camera and for thinking of me for his computer repair. I am sure there are qualified repair people in Ohio, closer to where Douglas lives. He most certainly, I'm not the only guy in town that's capable. And that faith and that trust means a lot to me. Rick Hubbard has contributed 3 pounds. Hey, Rick, thank you so much. My Coke is a little warm, though, so I think I need to dump it and get a fresh one. Hang in there for a minute. All right. No, Coca-Cola is not a sponsor of the channel. If they were, I'm sure I'd have a really nice studio, a camera operator, a sound engineer, a full-time video editor, a graphic designer. No, it's quite the opposite. I give Coca-Cola a lot of money, or in today's case, a lot of your money if you're contributing. So it goes. Some of that goes to the fuel to power this repair machine that is Carey Holzman. Mr. A. Cortez says that case would make an awesome Plex server build. It even matches the Plex colors. Very cool. I'm going to turn a few others blue here. I love seeing friendly, supportive, and kind comments in the chat room from folks, and love turning everybody blue. I want to see this whole chat room filled in blue. I really, really do. It's really important to me. When I took the computer out of the shipping box, I heard something rattling around. And that is probably I'm guessing, the brackets he mentioned, Douglas mentioned that he dropped the brackets behind the motherboard. I'm not sure how you do that, because the brackets are on this side. I'm guessing he means the big support bracket. But even the screws shouldn't be back there, and I'm hearing screws. I also see an LED light strip that looks like was added right here. And all that stuff needs to be disconnected when you're diagnosing a problem like this. Anything that's not absolutely required, you want to remove to help your diagnostics. I also see a large number of SATA cables, but I only see one mechanical drive and one DVD. How do you get to the DVD? Does this have a door? Oh, it has a door. Okay. Well, that explains that little mystery, doesn't it? Great. I didn't realize that Be Quiet made a case with a door. Well, let's pull this back side panel off. These are what we call captured screws, meaning the screws don't come all the way out. I like that because then you don't lose them. Well, that's what I was hearing. Are you a smoker, Douglas? I smell smoke. Cigarette smoke. Not that it's my business, but cigarette smoke is very harmful to electronics. Oh, he's got an SSD back here. He's got a Kingston solid-state drive. hidden back here. That explains one of the SSD cables. There's two more SSDs that I didn't see, and then the mechanical drive. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the optical drive is 5 devices. I thought I saw 5 SATA cables. Again, in diagnosing, you want to disconnect everything but the boot drive to ensure that you don't have a bad drive or not driver, but a bad drive or a bad cable that could be preventing the computer from posting. This is the bracket, what's metal, that I heard rattling around in there. And before I work on it, because it sounded to me sounded like more than one thing rattling around, I'm going to pick the case up and kind of shake it. This is very heavy. You want to be very careful that you don't hurt yourself when you do this. But basically, you just want to flip it upside down. Oh, jeez. I'm getting too old for this. You hear it? So my issue is I'm getting a cramp. Let me flex. I'm getting a cramp right in through here. That's weird. I don't know that I've ever felt that before. Oops. There is definitely a screw rattling around in there, and it's important before we turn this on that we remove anything that's loose because it could short circuit something, and then we have a problem for sure. And I see a few more contributions, and again, very generous contributions. Rod Venner has contributed 50 Canadian dollars. He says, "That's for all that you do, Carey. I gain a lot of knowledge, and I love watching your teaching style. Keep up the great work. Cheers to you and the rest of the gang in the chat today." Thank you, Rod. We'll make sure you're a moderator in here. Some World contributed $5 and says, "I'm back to work this week after being out since March 17th. Can't stay up to watch your whole video, and I'm already blue." Awesome. Awesome. Oh, well, I think he means he's sad, but he's a moderator now. He's blue physically here in the chat. And of course, if I didn't mention before, Rick Hubbard with his £3 contribution. Thanks to Rick, Rod, and Some World for your generosity and support of the channel. I still want to get back to figuring out how I'm going to get this screw out of here without hurting myself. This thing is heavy. Come on, man up, Carey. Let's go. Looks like I'm going to have to go the other way. It's in there somewhere. There it goes. Now, in this instance, it was not a metal screw, but rather this appears to be the little plastic clip that holds the back of the graphics card in. And it looks like it may have just popped off. I don't think it's broken. It just locks in. And it's not entirely necessary. In a worst case scenario, if you didn't want to put it back, you don't have to. Because I have to ship this all the way to Ohio, for those of you who don't know, the distance between, I don't know the exact distance, but it's about 2,000 miles from Phoenix. I don't know, let's just say Cleveland. I don't know exactly where in Ohio it's going, but Ohio's not that big. So looks like 2,017 miles. I was pretty dead on. That's a 30-hour road trip. 30 hours in the car, basically driving from one end of the United States to the opposite corner. That's pretty far away. So when it comes to shipping, when something is only being shipped to, say, California or Colorado, Oregon, I'm not too concerned. But when we're shipping as far as Ohio or Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, that's about as far as I can ship before I hit the ocean. So I want to make sure that when I ship this, I will put that little plastic clip on if it will stay on. Otherwise, I'll just need to make sure it's packed really well and make doubly sure that video card is seated so that it's facing down in the box, exactly the right way it was packed and shipped to me. Tony Wallow with a very generous contribution, $99.99. Hey, Tony, thank you so much. Tony's a great friend of the channel, and a generous one at that. Thank you, Tony. So actually, I want to mention the cable management here. It's not bad. I've got the computer on its side, right? This is the bottom. These are the feet. So the computer's on its back. And really highlights the care that was taken in the cable management here, which is very, very good for an amateur builder. You know, for somebody who doesn't do it for a living, that's an admirable job. That's a lot of cables. That's a lot of drives. And Be Quiet had always, both Be Quiet and NZXT have excellent cable management thoughtfulness in their case designs. Let me get you back on your feet here. Get up there. Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's over 50 pounds. I can tell you that's more than 50 pounds. That is quite a bit heavier than a 200R. And I don't see any reason why this case was required. I think everything in here would have fit comfortably in a 200R as well. But perhaps the aesthetics of it, or perhaps, you know, they like the concept of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 3.5-inch hard drives was appealing to them. I can see those two 3.5-inch SSDs in this cage right here. I don't like the way these cages stick out. They really interfere with any liquid cooling installation, and I don't like this design. It is a pretty case, but I don't like the design of it. It's not friendly to a liquid cooler design. And in most computer builds, if you're going to install liquid cooler, you need a larger case. Like a 200R isn't going to fit a traditional dual or triple fan cooler. You could maybe get one on the back of the case, like a 120 millimeter cooler or something like that, but liquid cooler. But beyond that, the 200R would be restricted. But because he's not doing that, he could have got away with a lot lighter and less expensive of a case that wouldn't have restricted any of his hardware choices at all. But that's my thoughts on that. Now, interestingly, and I don't know why, he's got the graphics card installed in the second PCI slot. And I can see the missing clip is up here at the top. And I wonder if that clip had broken before he sent the machine, and that's why he moved the graphics card, or was the graphics card there all along? I also see something that's really bothering me right now, and that is that this computer was shipped without any screws holding that graphics card in place. That's frightening, because if this graphics card were to break free during shipping from the handling of the box over the distance that it's going, it would bounce around all inside of the case. It would certainly damage the RAM. I don't know that it would, it could damage the motherboard, scratch it up. These motherboards are usually about 10 layers. You can't really tell, but there are circuits underneath circuits, just like a little city that's layered with 10 floors of city, 10 levels. So if you scratch the surface of the board, you could pull the surface mounted technology right off the board. You could also scratch the traces that carry the data and the power, rendering the board inoperable and out of warranty because you would have damaged it. He does mention the system's about 1.5 years old and out of warranty. However, I think the warranty on the motherboard is probably 3 years. Looks like a gigabyte board. The RAM may be lifetime warranted, and the video card, EVGA is very good on honoring warranties, and I want to say it's longer than a year on that. That's a 1660 Ti he's got in here. Now this little clip right here, this was right up here on this top PCI slot. And the top PCI slot is always your fastest one, and that's the one you should always be putting your graphics card in. Not that your graphics card isn't going to work in other PCI Express slots, but if you want the best performance, you want to be in your top slot for your graphics card. So before I go any further, I want to address this, and I want to disconnect power from the graphics card. That power was not plugged all the way in. Once again, I don't know if it was just kind of haphazardly slapped together to ship it to me. I know people often get frustrated when they're trying to diagnose their own systems, and once they reach a certain point, they're like, okay, I'm shipping it to Carey, just push it all back together and get it out of here. I don't want to see it. The sooner it gets to Carey, the better. I get it, but you should always, it doesn't take that much extra effort to just lock those cables in place. And again, it's to reduce the likelihood of any damage occurring. You know, if the cable comes off and it starts slapping around inside of here during shipping, is smacking up against stuff, it can cause damage to components. So I'm going to push a little tab in, and I should be able to release the graphics card pretty easily here. Yeah, it just came out super easy. And there's our graphics card right there. Now I just want to see if this little piece will snap back on. It usually just, like, it's so dark in there I can't see, but I'm trying to feel for it to snap into place. It may have a piece busted off. Let me grab a flashlight and some glasses so I can see, just to give it a real attempt here at putting it back. It's mostly an OCD thing, you know, it sort of was put there for a reason. Whether or not I personally think it's important is irrelevant. The engineers and the manufacturer felt it was important enough to include. Times like this, I wish I had Mitch here to give you a close-up of what I'm doing. We're going to get Mitch back here pretty soon. There it goes. So there's a little track that it fit in, and it's perfectly functional. It's fine. I wonder if he has no M.2 drive under here. That's a shame, because he's got this rocket ship of a computer that he's bottlenecking with solid-state drives that are SATA only. And then there's another M.2 socket down here. So he's got two M.2 sockets, neither are in use. And he's got G.Skill, Flare X, AMD compatible memories, what it says on the side. He's filling all 4 sockets. This is a Ryzen 7 1700. So it's one of the original generation Ryzens, right? The 1700? Because then there was the 2700, and now there's the 3600. So, or 3700, 3900, et cetera, et cetera. Or a couple generations on this one. It's a Gigabyte Aorus Gaming 5 Wi-Fi motherboard with a Be Quiet Dark Power Pro 850 watt power supply. I don't know why Be Quiet. Again, they've got some horizontal connectors and vertical connectors. I think they should have picked one and stuck with it. I think it's a good, reliable, quality power supply, but I don't like the aesthetics. I don't know why the power supply doesn't vent out to the back. It's got this weird gap that I just noticed where the power supply does not fit flush against the back of the case. That makes no sense to me. It makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know what the advantage to this is, or if it's even optional, because it looks like that power supply could have just slid to the back like any other power supply and been mounted like any other power supply. I don't know what the benefit of this was, of this design. It's very strange. I can see that there's a bracket put on the end of the power supply that enables it to be secured from the sides instead of from the front or the back, depending on your perspective of the power supply. That is an odd design choice. It does look like there's a couple of screws here that will remove these slots, but I don't see any way to mount the power supply in a traditional manner. Not that it's that important, but I want you to think about this for a minute. Power supply is going to draw air in from the bottom of the case. Let me take off my nerd glasses here. The power supply is going to draw air in, and then it's going to blow air out the holes on the back of the power supply. And what it's essentially doing with this case design is blowing that hot air right into your case. And when the graphics card was mounted down here, you're just getting it closer to your heat source. A heat source that shouldn't be there. The power supply is an enclosed ecosystem. It's going to bring air in from the bottom of the case. It's going to blow air out the back. It can't blow the air out the back with any efficiency given that large gap. I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a large gap right in here between the back of the power supply and the back of the case. There's a good 3 inches of space. And then there's a power extension cable. And essentially, Be Quiet is providing you with this switch and this receptacle. It is very strange, and I really don't understand what the benefit of that is. Sometimes either I'm not getting it, or the folks at Be Quiet are doing things just to be different. And I'm all about being different, but it should serve a purpose beyond just because. It should be offering us something, some benefit to make it worth being different. If there's no benefit to it, it seems unnecessary and a little confusing. So that's really a strange design choice, in my opinion. Want to check these power cables, make sure that they're on tight. I give them a light pull, make sure they're on okay. Now, to test this, I would use onboard video if the CPU offers it. A lot of Intel chips have graphics cards built right into the CPU. With the Ryzen series, however, I think a Ryzen chip has to have a G on it if it's got graphics built in. And I'm sure people in the chat room can correct me. I don't see a lot of Ryzens, so I'm not as much of an expert on that chip. The Ryzen 7 1700, I don't believe has built-in graphics, requiring us then to put a graphics card in it in order to test it. Looks like a nice motherboard. I like it's got 2 USB 3.0 ports here and a USB 3.1C front port connector for a motherboard that supports it. Plenty of SATA ports, as we can see. And of course, if we engage, I think this lower M.2, I think he'll lose these last two. Well, I guess the last two are on top, not on bottom. Trying to step away from the computer so the light's not so bright, in the hopes that you guys can see it just a little better. Lucas says and confirms that the 1700, or several of you are confirming the 1700 does not have built-in graphics, which I suspected. Thank you for letting me know. What a shame, because I don't have to do more work. Anything but that. The power supply shroud is not fitted, hence the gap. Thank you, John. John Ellison in the chat room is informing me that there's supposed to be like a plastic cover that goes over this so you don't see it. And then that would also exclude the heat from the rest of the case. This is what I was sent, and I've never seen this case in person before. So again, as a computer technician, this is par for the course. This is like any other computer repair. I'm seeing something I've never seen, and we just follow the general rules of computer building, which have never changed. Or they've changed a little bit, but there's not been any real major changes since the AT to ATX standard changed. And for the most part, whether you're building AMD or Intel, whether it's an Asus or MSI or ASRock or a Gigabyte motherboard, they're all pretty much the same. They all follow all the industry standards. And they use different screws, and the cases have different limitations or benefits, features. But it's all different, and it's all the same. It's hard to explain. Agent Gibb contributed $2. He said, I was able to fit my Kraken X62 in a 200R. You should take some pictures and send that to me. I'd very much like to see how you did that, because I think you'd have to cut the whole top of the 200R off to fit that. Bearpaw with a 2-pound contribution. I don't know if I called that out earlier. Thank you. Hello to Stephen Bernstein. Good to see you in the chat room, my friend. Another friend of the channel and supporter. A shout out to David Hale and Colin Hilton, as well as David Stetzel. And I know there's somebody else I'm forgetting. I'm reaching a point where I need to start taking notes. I hate when I leave people out. I think about it after the show and I kick myself. I'm like, oh, you left somebody out that deserved a shout out. So if I leave you out, feel free to let me know I left you out so that I won't do that again. I'm less likely to do it again if you call me on it. So we've got a couple screws missing here that, like I said, concerns me a little bit. I've got extra screws we can use. And I want to power the system on. In my experience, when a system turns on, in other words, you get the fan spinning, the lights on the case come on, but no video happens, there are 3 general things I go to first. Power supply, graphics card, RAM. And I start in the opposite order. I'm going to start with the RAM because that's pretty frequent to see bad RAM. See it all the time. Power supplies would be the second most frequent thing that I encounter personally, second only to RAM in this particular diagnostic. And then finally, the graphics card. I hear a lot of people say, you know, it can't be the power supply because the machine turns on. Well, you can get into a car and you can turn the radio on and you can turn the lights on and all that works, but when you go to start the car, the battery just doesn't have enough amperage to turn the battery over. So just because your radio and your lights come on in your car doesn't automatically mean you have a bad battery. And what I was taught in automotive school is if the car won't start, it may not be a bad battery. It may be a loose alternator belt that failed to charge your battery. Your battery in your car charges as you drive it. It's part of what your alternator does. Your battery is only used to start the car. Once the car is running, in theory, the battery can be disconnected. The car will continue running. It just won't be able to start again until you hook the battery back up. So the battery is very lightly used in an automobile unless you sit in it with the engine off, listening to the stereo or using the headlights or other electricity in the car, activating the windows up and down. Those can drain the battery quite a bit. But just because you're getting power doesn't mean the power delivery is working correctly. As such, you could have a power supply, and I've seen it, where yes, it turns on and the fan runs and it appears to work, but it's just not delivering enough power to deliver to the motherboard to activate to initialize properly. However, with that said, most of the time in my experience, if the machine powers up and is not booting, most of the time the power supply is fine. But we don't know until we check it, until we replace it with another power supply. A new power supply just for testing purposes is about $40, and a power supply tester, there are power supply testers that just test with like lights, but they're not putting a load on the power supply, which takes me back to the car battery. If you're measuring the voltage on a car battery, on a bad car battery, it still may say it's 12.8 volts. That doesn't mean the battery is good because it's not putting a load on the battery. It'd be like saying, hey, my back is just fine because I can stand upright. Okay, well, let me put 50 pounds on your back. Carry this backpack. That's how we're going to determine whether or not your spine's okay, you know? Just because you're able to stand and walk doesn't mean that you don't have any problems with your spine, right? Put a load on it, put some weight on it, and let's see how you do. So in the same way, if we don't put any load on the power supply, we really don't know just by plugging in a typical cheap power supply tester, anything other than voltage. And a power supply tester that will actually put a load on the power supply, those are several $100s. They're quite bulky, and you've got to learn how to use them. And it takes time. to test it like that. So why not just swap the power supply out with a new one very quickly for 40 bucks? That's your power supply tester. It's called your brain. And I'm sure that it'll be far more reliable and far more accurate than letting a tool think for you. So yeah, those three things: RAM, power supply, and then graphics card. Beyond that, then you run into a bad CPU or motherboard. CPUs very rarely go bad, as I've talked to you before about, and in which case that leaves you with nothing but the motherboard. It is a simple process of elimination, and some people criticize, well, you're just replacing you're swapping parts. Well, that's good business. Doing old school soldering iron repairs don't make sense when parts are this inexpensive. You end up paying a lot more in the United States for labor than the parts would cost to replace, and waiting a longer time for the repair than a part replacement. So it's good business. Customers are often happier with a faster repair and a cheaper bill. And some repairs aren't done correctly. Sometimes in a repair, the person repairing is fixing the consequence of the problem, but what caused that problem? And that's oftentimes missed, so that the computer has to go back again because they're either left with a new problem because the repair didn't go 100%, or they only fix the consequence of the problem, not the actual problem, which makes the computer go back for repair. That's more time without your computer. If you have something that's really, really expensive, if you have a smartphone that's, $1,000 or more, that's worth getting repaired by somebody. But in most cases, it's cheaper and faster to swap the parts. And if you're in business, if you're not a hobbyist, and you want to help as many customers as quickly and as cheaply as possible, you'll understand that being a part swapper is not an indication of electronics, a failure of electronics knowledge, but rather it's an attitude of being efficient and offering your customers a good service and reducing the likelihood of missing something, which oftentimes, again, happens in repairs. It also gives the customer a full warranty. A lot of repairs only come with a very limited warranty once they're repaired. If the motherboard is bad or the power supply is bad, we replace those because they're inexpensive and the warranty clock starts over again. Furthermore, if this motherboard is still under warranty, which I believe it is, if it turns out the board needs to be replaced, it probably will only cost for packing and shipping it, and about 10 to 14 days of downtime to receive a new board. So that's my thoughts on what I'm seeing here. I've not yet, obviously, if you're just joining, I have not yet turned the machine on to verify the customer's complaint. I'm not ready to yet because I still want to disconnect anything unnecessary from the motherboard, and that means disconnecting all of the connectors: the front audio header, the front USB 2 header, the front USB 3, even the power switch, reset switch, hard drive LED, and power LED. Pull all that off. We've got a case fan here. We don't need that for testing. And I'm going to unplug every single SATA cable. Now, I don't know which cable goes to which drive, so I might be messing up the drive order here. I'm not too worried about that at this point. I don't think it's critical. I'm going to disconnect all of these from the motherboard. And then I just want to take another glance. I've got to have power here and up here. I'm going to need to put a cooler on this, and I will get a separate power switch that I can use to power this on. Beyond that, I'll leave everything alone back here. I don't see any reason to disconnect power. However, sometimes a short in one of the drives can affect the power delivery depending on the power supply and depending on the circuit, the individual circuit. It's possible that the drive could have a power short that goes through the cable into the power supply and is shorting it out to the point where it's not delivering the right amount of power to this connector or this connector. That is possible with some power supplies. So these are all different variables to consider. We always start with the simple things. I know what I'm telling you may start to seem overwhelming. It's this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. If you feel that sort of overwhelming sensation, let me remind you, this is all very, very simple. Anybody can do what I'm doing. Sometimes you need to take a deep breath, focus in on one thing at a time. Don't be overwhelmed by all of the possibilities. You've got to start somewhere. And when I begin this diagnostic, I want to make sure that nothing is interfering, or anything that could potentially interfere that's not required for the system to power on and give me a boot screen or a BIOS. I want those things removed unless they're absolutely required for the system to boot. Once the system boots, then we can start plugging things back in and see if the system still boots. It's another process of elimination technique. Mira Ora contributed $10. Just skimmed the video notes and saw that it's a repair, so disregard my question. I see Mira Ora contributed $10 before that and said, did this build have any excessive packaging? The exact opposite, yeah. So thank you for your support and your contributions as always. Let me grab an external power switch. I got to figure out how I want to cool that CPU. I should have just a basic AMD cooler I can slap on there with the traditional brackets. Or no, I take it back. The AMD cooler screws down. I think we'll probably put a Mugen 5 on there, as I mentioned, I think. Somewhere. My question is, where did I put it? Bear with me a minute, guys, while I go through my organized piles. That'd be the best way to describe my system. I guess while I'm back here, I can grab the power switch before I forget. There we go, power switch. If I'm dismantling an old computer case, I will often remove the switches and LEDs for just such an occasion. Power switch just goes on the second set of pins, pins number 3 and 4 on the very top, horizontally, not vertically. I still can't see, so let me shine a little light in here. If you want to be technical, this is actually a reset switch that I pulled from a retired case. We'll call it retired, but a reset switch and a power switch do the same job. So it's just a matter of where you plug it in that determines what its action is when you press it. And let's see. I think I have a power supply. No, it's an empty box. There's no power supply in there. I mean, there's no cooler. There's no cooler in that one either. Who would have thought that I would need a stock AMD cooler for testing? Maybe I need to go buy one so I don't encounter this again. All right. I think what I'm going to do, what do I want to do? I've got a Ryzen 5 brand new in a box. I could take that out and use the cooler that's in there. Or I can grab a Mugen 5 and put it in there, since that's probably what we're going to end up using. I just figure it's going to take longer to put it on. Well, you know what? I got lots of these Mugen 5s, so let's just use one. Peter Almasi's contributed €2. Is it €2? It is. He says, good evening from Europe. to all, stay safe. Thank you, Peter. So here I've got the Mugen 5 cooler. I haven't really talked to Douglas about this, but regardless, if he doesn't want it, I'll use it in something else. I gotta use something here. I think by now you guys have seen me install these Mugen 5s enough that I don't have to detail it, right? Do I? I've got several videos, a couple with Mitch where he's giving me great close-ups with the camera during the installation process. Whether it's Intel or AMD, the installation process is very similar. David says, so you're the one snapping up all the Mugens, huh, Carey? Well, I don't just order one, I'll tell you that. Or I'd be ordering a lot. I generally order about a half dozen at a time, and then I'm good for about 3 months. I don't really use that many of them. And you know what? They're constantly back in stock at Amazon. They'll go out of stock for a few days, and people panic. And then they're back in stock again for a few days, and everybody's happy. And then they go out of stock again for a couple days, and everybody panics. And around the wheel goes. No reason to panic. It's their single best-selling cooler. There may be some delays in the manufacturing right now. However, it's just a little patience is all you need. $48.99 is all you should be paying for it. And if someone's out there asking anything more than a reasonable, say $65, anything more than $65, they're just gouging and taking advantage. And I would encourage you to be patient and pay a regular price, because all you're doing is condoning the behavior of these sellers that are taking advantage. There's no crisis involved. It's just it's a distribution problem right now, and there's been sort of this weird uptick in sales with computer parts that I think with people getting their stimulus checks and other things being out of work, they're upgrading or buying new computers, and as a result, a lot of computer parts are out of stock because there was an increased demand that was unusual. It was almost like a Christmas level type of demand on computer parts that the manufacturers were very surprised by. So just a little patience. If you don't want to be patient and you want to pay the money, it's your money. So I'm going to put this bracket back on here on the back. That just goes right back here like this. And I'll have to use a hand to hold that in place while I use the enclosed screws here to secure the brackets. So the Mugen 5, we have 4 screws and 4 standoffs, spacers. The spacers look like this, and the screws look like this, and you will only use these on socket AM4, AMD chips, and you'll see that screw just barely goes through there. And what's going to sit on top of that are these curved brackets here. So that screw will go through the bracket, through the spacer, and then that little bit of screw that sticks out, that's going to go into these threaded holes on the back, and it's going to sandwich the back plate and the bracket together. So if we didn't have the motherboard here, this is going to sit on like that. And then of course, once that's done, there's one hole on each bracket that then the Mugen 5 just seats right down to. So it's very easy third-party install. However, third-party cooler install, the AMD stock cooler is a little easier to install. But this is pretty easy as it is. There's no right side up. You can put this bracket in this way, or you can flip it 180 degrees and put it in that way. Either way is correct. It is the same dimensions on both sides. So you can see I'm going to have to hold that while I secure the bracket. You can see how it just wants to tilt outwards. It's ready to fall off at any minute. Sometimes helps to have an extra set of hands. Just need a little more fuel. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to get my electric driver out to bring those screws down as quickly as I can to get them seated. With an Intel bracket, you can actually put the brackets on in the wrong direction, but not with AMD. Their bracket is rectangular instead of square, so it's pretty hard to screw it up. Not that I'm challenging you to screw it up. Certainly doable. One side of the spacer has a bigger hole, and that's to go over the little posts that stick through. In fact, let me grab another spacer. Those aren't real tight, but it does help a little bit to keep that bracket from falling out. On the end of this bracket, there are two holes. It's like an elongated hole with it's kind of narrower in the center. And that's to fit different AMD sockets. And I don't know if we need the outside hole or the inside hole here. I suppose I'm just going to have to pick one and go with it. I'm going to go with the outside hole and hope my guess is correct. I'm going to slow the driver down. I don't want it to spin as fast. When I do this, actually, I may just want to turn these by hand now that I realize that I can knock the whole bracket out the back side if I'm not careful. So I'm going to just try this and see if it works okay. I'm going to hold the bracket with one hand. I'm going to put the screw in there, give it a few turns. Now I'll grab my electric driver and see if that's going to align properly. It does not. So I've got to use the inside part. Remember how I mentioned that this bracket right here, it has, the screw can either go in the top part or at the bottom. It looks like it's going to have to go in the bottom. That's typical for me to do it the exact opposite way. My instincts sometimes lead me down the wrong path, but it doesn't hurt anything. It's just delaying something, that's really simple. So you can see I put the screw in the top portion, how it locks it in there, because it's a little narrower in the center. Right there, there's a little little notch. So I'll put the screw now on the bottom part. So it's like that now, if you happen to be following along at home. And then I knocked the two little spacers loose, and they're down here somewhere. Nope, I heard it. Where did it fall? Where did it fall? It's There's one of them. Oh, I hear the other one. It's down here somewhere. It's right down in this little gap with all the cables. And everything's black, so super hard to see. Where did it go? Put that one back on there. Let me find that other one. It's in here somewhere. It's hiding. Sort of a disadvantage of working on the case upright like this is it does make some of the work I do a little more difficult. If I weren't filming, I would have laid the case flat on its back so I could work on it and work with gravity so those things wouldn't fall out. I'd probably have to still hold the rear bracket in regardless. I'm not sure if that would be easier or not. I'd like to think it would be, but I do work on the cases upright so you guys can at least get a gist of what I'm doing. If I lay the case flat, you're not going to see nothing. So bear that in mind if you're working on your computer. You know that thing's around here somewhere. Where did it fall? Where did it go? Come on now. You can run, but you can't hide. Well, I guess you can hide. But you can't run. Well, I guess it can do that too. All right, well then, never mind. It is in here somewhere. I thought I heard it. Where did it go? I'll tell you what I want to do right now is I want to put this, I want to secure this one screw in there just to keep the bracket from falling out. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to move the one I've got up here to the top. And then I'm going to secure the bracket up there. Or at least get it started, not secure it, but get the screw started. And that way at least the bracket can't fall. The mounting plate that I'm holding with my other hand behind the motherboard. As long as there's one screw there, it's obviously not going to be able to go anywhere. I don't want to tighten it down too much because I still need to be able to pull this away to get the other spacer on there. Just have to find the other spacer. Vern says you should shake it. You know, it's really, really heavy, which is discouraging me from picking it up and shaking it. And because the other space, I'd have to remove the other spacers, and then I want the bracket to fall out, and I make a bigger mess. So before I resort to that, let me just take another look. It's probably right in front of my face, but because it's black, and the power supply is black, and the cables are black, and the case is black, which is great. You know, it makes the system look good when it's done. But when you drop a part, it may make it difficult to locate the part that has fallen. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to start putting the other bracket in. Once again, I want to keep these, I don't want the other spacers to fall out, you know. So we'll put the other one in there. Nice. I'm going to have to loosen that one up to get the spacer under it, but if I'm going to pick this thing up and shake it, I just want to make sure I don't lose anything in the process. Oh, I just heard it. It sounds like it's right up front. I promise you, it's more than likely right in front of my face, because it sounds like it's right there. So wherever it's rolling around, I wonder if it fell into this area right in here, and if that's why I'm not seeing it. There's a gap between the bottom of the case on the inside and the bottom of the case on the outside, and it may be in this trapped area, which would explain a lot. And there does seem to be holes big enough for it to fall into, and that is entirely possible what has happened. And it would be just my luck, too, that that would happen, especially while I'm live in front of, how many people? Wants to show me up. I suspect that's what's happening here, and I don't know how this comes off. It appears to slide backwards, to slide off this piece. There's clearly no screws or anything under the feet. It's possible there are some screws behind the front panel, and that this front panel has to come off first. That would be just my luck, wouldn't it? Unless I can get super lucky and have it fall right back through the same hole that initially got it down there. I don't know if I'm going to be that lucky. And this is very heavy. Very heavy. Oh, I got lucky. There it is. You didn't know you had to be in good physical shape to be a computer technician, did you? If not, you're gonna be. Thought they were making stuff smaller and lighter. Whatever happened to that process? That was my exercise for today. So I'm going to loosen the screw up here so that I can get the spacer underneath of it. Put that right down there like so. Perfect. Okay, so I want to get some denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip, and I want to clean the top of the CPU off. Even though this is intended to be a temporary application of the heatsink, because I have a feeling I'm going to be taking it back off again. Cleaning it is really something you want to do before a permanent install. It's not so important while diagnosing. However, if in this process this machine boots and I have not cleaned it, then it's going to force me to take it off and take the thermal paste back off and re-clean it again. So there's a chance that once I put this on, I will not have to take it back off. And because of that, I don't want to have to take it off because I know my thermal paste is not was not applied on a cleaned surface. So I'll just take a Q-tip. This is my denatured alcohol. I'm going to run it across the surface of the heat spreader on the CPU. I don't have to dry it. The alcohol is going to evaporate. However, I will often use the dry side of the Q-tip just to get up any other material that might be sticking to the surface of the CPU heat spreader. Basically just the top of the CPU. Technically it's a heat spreader, but it's for the non-technical, it's just the top. Clean the top. All right. We good? We're good. Now Thermaltake gives us Thermaltake. What am I talking about? Scythe, the people who make the Mugen 5, give us lots of thermal compound in a little dispenser here that looks like a needle. But it's not a needle. It's got a little end on it here that will allow us to put about however much that is of thermal compound, just a little dab of it on there. Then I'll get a rubber glove and I'm going to spread that around with my finger. I'm sorry, not a rubber glove, but a nitrile glove. You don't want to use latex or rubber gloves inside of a computer because they are not anti-static friendly. But nitrile gloves are pretty much priced the same and just as easy to find. And what I like to do when I apply thermal compound is I like to spread it evenly across the entire surface of the CPU. So I don't have to wonder if I have full CPU coverage by trusting that just putting a dab and setting the heatsink on it is going to be enough to not only spread the thermal compound, but spread it evenly across the entire surface. Now, how you wish to apply your thermal compound is your business. And how I apply mine for me and my customers is my business. So we'll make a deal. I won't tell you how to do yours, and you don't tell me how to do mine. Deal? Deal. I'm simply sharing with you my process. I'm not asking for your approval. Okay? Unless you're my customer, then I want your approval. Now, with the thermal material, this is how I apply it. This is the way I've been doing this for a number of years, and somehow I've managed to stay in business and not have computers come back for follow-up repair. So take that for what it's worth. I do need to set the case down on its back now to install the top of the this part of the CPU cooler. The heat sink needs to be installed with the case down because it's heavy, and installing it upright like this, I am a glutton for punishment, but not that much. Not so much. So let me move this out of the way and put that up here. And let's set this down on its back one more time. There we go. You'll notice on the heatsink, one of the screws kind of sticks out, and the other one is, you see it's offset. This part that sticks out on your AMD or your standard Intel socket 1151 build, or even a socket 1200 build, the part that sticks out, you want that to go towards your RAM. So I will place that just like this. There's a small piece of plastic on the bottom of the heatsink here. Just want to show it to you real quick. It's really important these surfaces remain free of any contamination, dust, dirt, oils from your skin. So that plastic is there to keep this surface completely clean. So you want to leave this plastic on until you're ready to install. Do not leave this plastic on when you install, or it will interfere with the ability of the heat transfer to be efficient. So you can see how clean and mirror-like polish that surface has because that plastic was covering it. And then we're immediately now going to place it just as I described. We'll use the screwdriver that's enclosed with the Mugen to get the screws started. And you want to tighten the screws down evenly. If you turn one screw a few turns, then go to the other side, turn the other screw a few turns, and repeat until the screws come to a dead stop. The reason we do that is to prevent any sort of a warp to occur from tightening down one side fully before tightening down the other. It may look to you that it's flat, but it may actually be sitting a bit not level. And then, of course, you're going to have heat problems. Or it certainly won't run as cool as it possibly could. Now I can put the fan on. I can do this with the rest of this upright, so we'll bring it back upright again. You can see what that looks like. Oh, there it is. I want to remind you, I have yet to turn this computer on for the first time. So I don't know. I don't know yet that I can confirm the customer's complaint. This person built their own system and it was running just fine for over a year. And then it just decided it didn't want to boot anymore. That's a pretty unusual scenario. Something like that may occur after a thunderstorm or an electrical spike or power outage that may have damaged a power supply or a component if it wasn't powered, cycled correctly, or if it endured any type of a spike or brownout in the power delivery from the wall. That some people live in areas where that's more common, and that's where an uninterruptible power supply can be your best friend. I want to grab some nylon zip ties and tie that cable up right now because otherwise I'll have to take it back apart. I'm trying to think optimistically that once I put the heatsink on there, that I'm not going to have to take it back off. However, if the customer who sent me the system is right, they believe they have a bad motherboard. If they're correct, then all that's got to come back off again because the motherboard will have to be sent back to the manufacturer for an RMA, or we'll simply buy a new motherboard and put it in there depending on what the customer wants to do. In which case, or in either case, I still have to take the CPU and heatsink and everything out. So I'm being optimistic in that if I take care of this now, and I'm lucky, I won't have to remove it because I was pessimistic and said, I won't do the cable management now because I'm probably going to take it off anyway. Find out that it all works, and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done the cable managements so that I wouldn't have had to take it back off. So either way, pick whichever way suits your personality, but this is why I'm doing it now. And honestly, because of this cable management, this would be done regardless. So it's going to have to be done at some point. So if I do it now, even if I have to take it back off, when I reapply it, when I reinstall it, this will already be done. So it'll be one less thing I got to do. $10 contribution from Mira Ora said, last time we had a thunderstorm, lightning struck so close, my UPS buzzed and my mouse stopped working until I unplugged it from the USB port and plugged it back in. Yeah, I've seen some lightning cause some really strange problems. I don't know if it's an EMP, like an electromagnetic pulse that interferes with the electronics when the lightning hits that close to your house. But it took an entire networking switch and every networking card out. Even though there was no power spike that I noticed, the whole house lit up in orange. That's how close the lightning was. And I think it was an EMP. But I don't know. I had to replace all the networking equipment, everything. So that was fun. Nothing you can do. It's Mother Nature, and you want to fight Mother Nature, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to lose. So you just kind of roll with the punches. It's not something that happens often. You may never experience that ever again. Maybe a once in a lifetime thing, and it makes for an interesting story to tell later. So, you know, you get your money's worth out of it. Out of the inconvenience and expense of replacing what was otherwise perfectly good working electronics. I feel like this isn't seating all the way. Yeah, it's definitely not seating correctly. Bear with me here for a moment while I figure this out. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. John 10 with a $20 contribution says, I really enjoyed your recent video on NVMe and RAID 0. Thank you. Thanks for the support and the contribution. I think I'm ready to test fire this and duplicate the customer's problem here, or at least attempt to. I've got my power switch hooked up. We've got cooling installed properly and with power. So now I just need to get video. Oh, I got to plug the video card back in. We're going to put that up here on the top where it should have been. So that kind of sucks that there's this gap, you know, between the power supply and the back of the case, because that's where everything wants to fall. You know, when it comes loose, it wants to go right down in there. I'm going to move these two support brackets, or PCI covers rather, down over these other holes and do this the way I feel it should be done. Now I just got to find where that little thumb screw went. It's right in that little gap. I know it is. I just wonder if the engineers would be quiet, think of this stuff, you know. Now I understand there's supposed to be a shroud, which I'm assuming is true. It still doesn't make sense to do this. It seems completely unnecessary. Like, if there is an occasion where this benefits somebody, I think it benefits so few people that it's not worth accommodating that minority to inconvenience the majority who doesn't know any better. And then force them to have to deal with this nonsense for no good reason. Okay. Now we do have to plug a graphics card in here because, like I said, or what was confirmed with me in the chat room was there's no onboard video with the CPU. Some CPUs do have onboard video, others do not. Here's our power connector for the graphics card, which needs to have power or you're going to see the same symptom that the customer described, which is that everything turns on but there's no video. That would happen if your cables were not plugged in or not fully plugged in. And I just want to double check on the connectors here for the graphic card to make sure that it's fully seated. There appears to be two separate power connectors for the graphics card. There's a spare one right here in my hand, but it's all going into one connector onto the power supply. So I was going to remove it if it wasn't needed, but it's part of, it looks like both of these individual cables come together in one connector that plug into the back of the power supply. So that's why that extra one's hanging around. So with that done, I need a keyboard and a mouse. I need to borrow your monitor at home. I also want to put these spare cooler parts in a little Ziploc bag so I don't lose them or confuse them with any other parts. So there's standoffs for Intel-based systems we don't use. There's extra brackets for another fan, and the brackets for Intel CPUs, including the back plate for Intel CPUs. Documentation, this all goes back to the customer. And of course, the remaining thermal compound. I'm also doing this for my own sanity because this repair, maybe a lot more to this repair. So if I need to pull the cooler off and change things around, I don't want to go hunting for the parts. They're all together. So if I lose that bag, I lose all the spare parts. I won't just lose one or two. Okay, so I guess I can put this driver away. I shouldn't need that. I'm going to need some video so I can plug into the back of your monitors at home. And we'll plug that here on the graphics card and the HDMI. And keyboard and mouse, I need that. So we'll grab this keyboard and mouse. Push this back a little bit. Come on. There we go. Dongle in any USB port here. Finally, the last thing is power. I like to save that for last. Make sure the switch is in the off position. It is. And I got to go around the back with this. There. And then I've got an outlet right over here by my garbage can, which is plug in right there. Okay, so after all my announcements and all the setup, we're 2 hours into it and we can do the first power on to verify the customer's complaint. Right now we have, how many people watching do I? 1,401 people are watching. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging in there. You're right on time because we're about to see what happens. I'm going to turn on what I call camera 2. Now, camera 2 is the input from the computer. So you'll see it says no signal there below me. And that's just telling us that no signal is coming out of this box to send to your monitor at home. I'm going to hit this power button after, let's see, put the switch to on. I'll hit this power button. 2 fans are turning. LED strip is lit up here. And look like the 2 front case fans are spinning. Yeah, so all the fans are running, all the fans are installed in the proper direction. LED strips are entirely unnecessary. However, it is behaving so far as the customer described, which is fans turn, lights come on, doesn't get beyond that. He did mention he changed out the CPU. Now, first thing I want to check is the RAM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the switch back here to shut it all down. And I'm going to pull all but one RAM module out of here. So I'm going to open up the retaining levers that hold this RAM in, and I'm going to pull every stick of RAM out except for one stick of RAM. And with the stick of RAM that remains, I'm going to pull it out and reseat it just to make sure that it's in there correctly. That looks good. I'm going to hit the switch back on and turn the machine back on again. Or I'm not. Oh, I didn't hook that power switch up. I got to use my power switch. Helps if you pay attention. or if I pay attention. And let's see if we get any power on self-test or post from the motherboard, which is that logo, and it often will go right to the BIOS. I'm hearing that mechanical drive clacking. And we're not getting any post. So I'm going to shut the machine back off. I'm going to take this RAM module out and literally put any of the RAM modules that I removed into that slot. So just randomly take one, place it back into the first slot. Now some motherboards may require you to use a specific slot when using one RAM module, and I will check that next. We can go online and look up this motherboard manual from the manufacturer just to see where they advise, recommend placing a single module. They will often have a socket that is preferred, although in my experience it generally doesn't prevent the machine from booting, but it's possible that it could. So a different RAM module back in the first socket. We'll see if we get any power on self-test. Fedora says, could it be the graphics card? It's certainly possible. At this point, literally anything could be the culprit. There's a red LED down in this bottom right corner that's flickering. It's moving. There's like two side by side, and it kind of looks like it's to the right, and then it goes to the left. It should have done something by now, and its behavior is exactly as the customer described. So another thing I want to check while I've got the machine out like this is to reset the BIOS. Sometimes if people are in there and they're messing about, or even a power spike, I've seen that affect a BIOS. So I want to clear the BIOS, and there's usually a jumper to do that, a little plastic piece that we move onto a different set of pins, and it appears to be I'm going to borrow the jumper we've got over here, and I'm going to jump this right here. And then I've got to remember where I took this and put it right back exactly the way it was. Now that, in theory, should clear a BIOS out, which may or may not make any difference whatsoever. Yeah, those LEDs are very, very bright. I don't know if you guys can really appreciate these LED strips, how bright they are, but it's really kind of throwing me. So this is an X470 Aorus Gaming 5 Wi-Fi. I want to look up the manual just to see where they're recommending what slot I put the RAM in. So bear with me for a second while I use the streaming computer here to Google this. So it was X470 Gaming 5 Wi-Fi. There it is, first link. Thank you, Google. Click on support, and then we'll go to manual. And there's two here that says English. Oh, okay. See, unique features, RAID setup. No. User's manual. That's what I want. We'll hit the download button. I'm going to scroll down to where it talks about the RAM. It only shows dual channel. It's not showing that it will boot with a single RAM module on this board. That's weird. And it doesn't matter. According to this, we can install in as long as we skip one memory slot, we can then it's correct. So if I want to start at the edge of the board, skip a slot and work towards the CPU, or start at the CPU, skip a slot and work towards the edge of the board. Either one of those with two RAM modules are sorry. Turn the microphone. Either one of those is an acceptable memory configuration. There are actually 4 little LEDs down here, I guess. Very difficult to see what it's. Oh, okay, so the one that's lit says CPU, and then it flickers over to DRAM, and it doesn't go beyond that. It just flickers back and forth between CPU and DRAM. I've often found these diagnostic LEDs make the diagnostic more difficult. They very rarely provide any useful information in my experience. But we're still not booting. I want to check the strength of the BIOS battery, the CMOS battery. So I'm going to pop this battery out of here real quick. Of course it's going to fall in that gap. I just love this design. Let's see if the magnet will pick it up. Ooh, it does. Yeah, there we go. So I got the battery. Let me grab my battery tester. We'll see if this battery is any good. These batteries are usually good for about 5 years. However, I've seen some where, for whatever reason, they fail when they're relatively new. And battery testers are pretty cheap. I've got one off eBay a long time ago. It came in from China. Probably cost me $3 or something. And if you've watched my channel before, you've seen this battery tester. It's a button cell battery tester. We just place the button cell in the hole there that's close to. This thing is not registering. That needle doesn't move at all. Not at all. That's strange. I should get some kind of a... Anything? Nothing? Strange. Like, that is dead as a doornail. It does not... That needle doesn't move. That makes me think my battery tester is broken. Let me grab another battery just to test my battery tester. Going down a rabbit hole now. Want to join me? You may never find your way out of this one. Let's see. I'll just grab one of these spare ones I've got laying around here. Once again, I'll put the battery meter, put it in there. Am I putting it in backwards? No, it's got to go face down. Okay, well, maybe my battery tester's bad, because that's not right. Nothing. Got nothing. I have another battery tester. That's really strange, though. Let's see, does this one test button cells? I think it does. So this is a different kind of battery tester. It's just another one I had ordered because it looked kind of cool. And you can put the button cell in this little gap and sort of put it on an angle. And it'll read the strength of the battery. So it's not 100%, but it's close. So that's the battery I took out from my back office. Here's the one that was in the motherboard. Let's see what that registers as. It's very, very low. Can you guys see the battery strength? It's in the red. So the motherboard battery is bad. I'm just going to temporarily use this battery for the sake of trying it. Flip the switch back on, and we're going to hit power again. Could it be that easy? Could it all be just for a little $2 battery that this thing was shipped all the way from Ohio? Could we be that lucky or that unlucky? Some people are like, geez, it was that easy, I feel bad. You're like, no, you should feel good, that's all it was. You don't want a major problem. I don't want a major problem. I'll take easy problems all day. It's going to be a bigger problem. Interesting. So it's not likely the RAM. And with the new battery in there, that's clearly not causing the problem, though it's unusual that battery would be that low on a motherboard this new. But it is what it is. It's certainly low and in need of replacement, but not the cause of our problem. So sometimes in diagnosing, we can find other minor issues. And when a customer gets the machine back, you know, it's 100%. It's not just listening to the complaint the customer has, but fixing other issues the customer may not be aware that they have. But it's clearly not booting. So I want to make sure my video cable's plugged all the way in. I also want to make sure it's plugged all the way in on the back of the capture card. Make sure that we're getting a good connection here. And turn it back off. This is the other thing to note. When I hit the power button, just tapping the power button should shut it off. It's not. If I hold the power button in, will it turn off? It does. So we are getting some communication from this board. When a board is completely toasted, like the switch won't be effective at all. Let me flip it back on. Since my cables have been reseated, I just want to try one more time. I am optimistic, but more importantly, thorough. I am getting no joy from this board. Thank you to Guy Sternitsky, who's contributed $10. He says, Carey, I love your shows. Keep up the good work. Hey, thank you, Guy or Guy, depending on how you pronounce that. And from Kevin Arsnaw, again, 20 Canadian dollars. Again, thank you, Kevin, for contributing to the channel. Johnny Ortiz with a $10 contribution. Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, this is just not going to boot for us. So the next phase in diagnosing this, I think, is to pull the motherboard out of this case. I think that, you know what, let me make myself full screen here. I think to diagnose it further, it would be best if I didn't have all of this surrounding me, you know, kind of getting in my way. Also to ensure that there's nothing back behind the motherboard I'm not seeing that could be shorting out against it. Parts today are very, very, what's the word? They can take a lot of punishment, you know, compared to motherboards of 20 or 30 years ago. And so to see a motherboard go bad, it still happens occasionally, but it's not something that usually just happens on its own. There's usually something that, as a precursor, that causes it. It could be overclocking, playing in the BIOS, short-circuiting something, getting into the computer to modify something. Maybe you're adding RAM or you're making a change to something inside. That can cause the problem as well. Again, could be a bad power supply here. This is, again, something easier to change when the board is out. The good news is, when I pull the board, I just have to remove the mounting screws. I don't have to take the heatsink back off. I can use the heatsink as a means to hold the motherboard and maneuver it to wherever I want it to be, to pick it up and move it where I want to move it, and not have to worry about any electrostatic discharge. As for the graphics card potentially being bad, that's also a possibility to check. And what I would do is, I've got another, I don't have a 470, but I think I've got a B450 motherboard. And I could pull the CPU and RAM and put it onto the B450 I've got, just to make sure the CPU and RAM are okay, and power it with this power supply. And if everything boots up, it will essentially conclude a bad motherboard. From that point, I would contact or go online to Gigabyte and fill out the RMA request form. They may require a receipt. They may not. Sometimes they know from the serial number that the machine can't be older than its manufacturing date. When you start getting close to the end of the warranty, then you would need to provide a receipt that shows that you purchased it after, clearly after the date it was manufactured. It's unlikely you purchased it the day it was manufactured, but that serial number represents the day it was manufactured. So if you're a year and a half into a 3-year warranty, I doubt it was sitting on a shelf for a year and a half before you purchased it. X470 hasn't been out that long. So in that case, they would not necessarily need the receipt. We'll have to see. And that's assuming we conclude a bad motherboard, which I've not yet concluded. So these are the basic tests, and because it's taking me 2 hours, nearly 2.5 hours just to get to this point, I think I'm going to continue this tomorrow. I got a little bit of a later start today than I wanted to get, and then I had a lot of sort of business to talk about before I got started here, which took me away from some of the diagnostic time. Plus the fact that the system was sent without a heatsink, and I had to deal with putting something on there for testing. And as a result, didn't make the progress I was hoping to make in today's video. But I won't touch it. I'm going to leave it just like it is, so we can pick up tomorrow right where we left off. Fresh and clear, we jump right into it and start diagnosing beyond this point here and see where it leads us. I want to give a shout out and a thank you to all the contributors during today's broadcast. And let me do that now by, hold on, I'm getting, supposed to be a list of information here. It's not coming up. We have 1,445 viewers watching now. If you want to give me a shout out, let me know where you're watching me from. I always enjoy seeing where everybody watches from. Michael Dane had just contributed $10. He says, I'm sorry I'm late, Teach. What a great build, Carey. Have a great day. Michael, thank you as always. Kevin Arsenault, Guy Strnitsky, John Tem, Mira Ora, Johnny Ortiz, Peter Amasi, a couple other contributions from Mira Ora, Agent Gibb, Tony Wallow, Bearpaw, Some World, and Ron Venner, Rick Hubbard, Joseph Panariello, Ryan Farmer with 500 pounds in contributions today. That's crazy. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm not worthy. Thank you. Nicholas Iglini, thank you. Rochester NY87, a very generous contribution of $50. Thank you. Sean Baxter, Paul 1961, Ryan 1 full. Again from Kevin Arsenault, Eduardo Turan and Hot Dog Thompson, Mark Stevens, Jeremy Kramer, John Yasuda, Daniel Pexton, The Drunken Troll, Sharon Idle, Jose and Veronica Lopez, Wonder Woman, Scott Hallinan, John Dorrington, Armando Garcia, Rick Lakes, Bearpaw again, Chris Keegan, Mike Jackson, Steve Warrington, John Craig, Ed Schwartz, another from Kevin Arsenault again, David Griswold, Stephen Wales, Niles Vandesan, South Bay Technology Gurus, Andrew Dorset, Sharon Idle, again from Tony Wello, and the first contribution today kicked off before the stream started, and that's from Hugh Wong, a frequent contributor here and proud community member. Thanks you guys so much for supporting the channel. And I see all of the locations coming in: Madison, Wisconsin, Brownsville, Texas, Sydney, Australia, people watching in Chicago, several in Michigan, my home, Mendoza, Argentina, Spokane, Washington, or is it Spokane? Charlotte, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, New York, Winnipeg, Canada, Huntsville, Alabama, Bolton in the UK, Luke Greenia, another proud friend of the channel. Hi, Luke. Sorry, I didn't notice you till now. He joins us from Vermont. Rick Hubbard joins us from Leicester, England. And Polymath says greetings from Portland, Oregon. Coffee Grinder 63 is in Minnesota. KL joins us from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Ultra Supra from Los Angeles. Zvi Manor is joining us from Israel. Hot Dog Thompson's in South Carolina. George joins us from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. Carey, what is the link to Amazon? I'm ready to buy some solid state drives. Robert Jones wants to know. If you click on any Amazon link I have in the video notes below any videos, including this one, if it's taking you to Amazon, that one will work for you. Once you're at Amazon, then just use the Amazon search to go purchase whatever products or to locate whatever product you want to purchase from Amazon. It's just the fact that my link took you to Amazon. I make a small commission from any purchase. Your purchase is not any more money. Nothing changes from your end. And I appreciate that you're supporting the channel. Ron Sprague is watching in Mesa, Arizona. Stephen Bernstein joins us from Florida. Johnny Ortiz in Yuma, Arizona. Carl Wilson's in Beaverton, Oregon. Dan joins us from Romania. Joseph Hawkins from New Zealand. Nunman is in Tennessee, and Elvis Stooges joins us from Colorado. Thosian65 is in Scotland, and Eduardo Turan joins us from Sonora, Mexico. Bora 20 High is in Norway. KL is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Jim G is in Dallas, Texas. Reverend John O'Toole joins us from Massachusetts. Paul joins us from San Diego. Gabriel Granados joins us all the way from Costa Rica with Flavio Salsa from Portugal. Danny McGrath is in NL, Canada. What does NL mean? Kevin Arsenault joins us from Montreal. Rod Venner is in Calgary. A lot of Canadian viewers today. Nothing wrong with that. Eric Nilsson joins us from Sweden. Jean Tem is in Central Texas. Ricky B's in Lancaster, California. David Griswold is in good old Michigan. Mark is in Coldwater, Michigan. You know why it's called Coldwater? Stick your toe in the river. It's cold. That water is cold. Luke says he deposited the usual $20 via your PayPal link, keeping you and your dad in my thoughts and prayers. He says, stay healthy, my friend. Thank you, Luke. Thank you so much. As always, it's appreciated. And not just the contribution, but your kindness and your friendship. Tony Wallow joins us from California. Oh, NL is Newfoundland, Canada. I didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you. I learned something new. Ken Schmidt joins us from Hawaii. Don Mildus is in Sydney, Australia. And Steve Bass, oh, I didn't see Steve was in there. Steve Bass joins us from Pasadena, California. I was just very close to Pasadena, but what am I going to do? Stop by and give you COVID-19? I'm not doing that. Do a wave, a drive-by wave? You weren't that close to where I was. I have Steve on the show on Friday, so I better get this figured out tomorrow, right? Oystein joins us from Norway. Paul O'Brien is in Ireland. And Rick03038 is in New Hampshire. I know I've skipped a few of you. DRK Sem is in Singapore. Henry Tapfer is in Sena, Thailand. Brad joins us from Missouri. XXC Gamer XX is in Nova Scotia, Canada. HDTV Watcher joins us from Kenilworth, New Jersey. Ken Mall is in the Philippines. Danny wants to know my thoughts on Windows 10 2004. The video I made last week before I left to go out of town was all about Windows 10 2004. Aaron Armstrong, Computer Repair and Tips, contributes $2. He says, great stream, Carey. Well, thank you, Aaron. I was hoping to get a little bit more done today, but it's more important to me that I do it methodically than do it quickly, and sometimes it means I have to stretch these videos out into another day because of limitations with lighting and battery life, and my dogs are letting me know it's past their dinner time. Right? Is that what you guys, we'll give them a quick hello, and then we're gonna get out of here. All right, you guys want to say hello? You want to say hello? Oh, boys. There's Jimmy. Jimmy says hello. Lyle, come here. You got to say hello. Oh, you're such a big. Knocks my microphone off. Come here, Lyle. Where's Lyle? There's Fluffy Tail. Right there. Mr. Fluffy. Oh, he answers to that. He says, did you call my name? You backing that thing up? Are you backing it up? All right. Well, the dogs say hello. They are hungry. As you can tell. They're just all skin and bones. You guys are going to blow away in a strong wind if you don't eat soon. Oh, I know. I know. It's exciting. I wonder what it's going to be for dinner tonight. I wonder what might be on the 10-page menu. Will it be dog food? Or maybe dog food? Possibly even dog food. The mystery will be solved. Very soon they'll have their answer. You probably know what it is, right? Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all of your support and your kindness and for all the contributions. Again, if you use any of the Amazon links in the video notes below this video, you'll see where all these tools come from. Even, I think this battery tester came from Amazon. Everything I use in my video, the Mugen 5 cooler, all of this comes from Amazon. If you use one of my links to take you to Amazon, and then you buy anything from Amazon, I make a small commission. It comes back to the channel. That helps support the channel. Doesn't cost you anything any different, and doesn't change your, anything as far as you're concerned. It just kicks back a little small commission over here to help support the channel for stuff you might just be buying from Amazon anyway. So I appreciate any way that you support the channel, whether that's through sharing the video links on your favorite social media sites, or participating in the chat room, or submitting contributions financially, or just watching, just hanging out and being with us and being a part of this amazing community. It means the world to me, and I really appreciate people not only just being kind to me, but being kind to one another. So thank you so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow about 3 o'clock Pacific time to further diagnose the system in what will be part 2 of this video. I will see you all again very, very soon, and until then, bye for now.